Hosea and Gomer and a marriage relationship. And then chapter 4 through 14 deals with God and Israel. God being, or a type of God is Hosea, and a type of Israel is Gomer. And what happened to that marriage situation is what God is saying happened to the northern tribe of Israel. It might be helpful to just again think about this is Mount Carmel, thumb stuck out, and then the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River and the Dead Sea down here. The northern tribes were situated here on the coast. That's Asher. Naphtali was this area in here. Zebulun and Issachar were here. So that these are the four tribes up in the northern sector. Then you had the half tribe of Manasseh here, and then the other half tribe of Manasseh was on the east side of the Jordan River. And then you had Ephraim in here, and Dan was here, and Benjamin was here, and this is Judah, and this is Simeon. Over here on this tribe was the half tribe of Manasseh and Gad and Reuben. And then the Moabites, this was Moab here, and this was Edom here. These were, Moab is the child of Lot through incest. And Edom was the brother of Jacob. So when we say Israel, the tribes of Israel, we mean Jacob had 12 sons and a daughter. We're still wondering who's in the kitchen with Dinah. Of the 12 tribes, here are the 12 tribes. But Manasseh and Edom, or Ephraim, are the sons of Joseph. So Joseph see how much territory was given to Joseph, here and here. Dan got tired of getting beat up because this is where the Gaza Strip is. And so he moved his tribe all the way up here. So Dan became the northernmost part, and you had from Dan to Beersheba. Beersheba is down in this territory here. That was the territory of Israel. Israel is Israel. The El on the end of Israel means Elohim, a plurality of God. And this is God, and this is a prince, or a prince with God, or that idea. So his name was changed from Jacob, which means deceiver, to Israel, a prince with God. And that's kind of interesting. Names are important, and your name is important. So that's kind of where we are. And when we're thinking about the northern kingdom, what we're thinking about here's Ephraim, and all of these became part of the 10 tribes. All of this. And these 2 tribes here, this is called Judah. So, and this was called Israel, the 10 tribes of the north, Israel. Any questions about their location? Hosea is prophesying to the northern kingdom. This book, he focused on the northern kingdom. There are 2 prophets that prophesy to the north. And they spell the word Ha. Hosea and Amos. If you don't like my way of remembering things, then get your own. But these two prophets prophesied to the north. Amos, and Hosea. We'll look at the different prophets and who they prophesied to. Joel, the next one, prophesies to the southern kingdom, to Benjamin and to Judah. Any questions?
Relate what you just said, if you will, if you will just relate what you just said to a numbskull who's not awake yet this morning. Where does this fit between Cyrus and the release?
Say it again.
Where does all of what you just spoke of fit with Cyrus and the release of the Jews? Are they still in Babylon, or is this after Babylon?
Okay, good. What happened is this northern kingdom was taken in 722 BC by the Assyrians. But the southern kingdom, Benjamin and Judah, only 2 tribes, last until, there are 3 invasions, but the last one is 586 BC. So you can see the difference between 722 and 586. This kingdom lasted longer than the northern kingdom when Assyria was allowed to come in and take them. Now, the northern kingdom has been scattered and was scattered with the Assyrians, and really not, they didn't come together. They weren't cohesive. The southern kingdom, Benjamin and Judah, were taken to Babylon. In 586 BC is when they finally were taken. And then 70 years later, Cyrus came on the scene because the Babylonians were in power until 539. And when the Medo-Persian Empire took over, Cyrus was the king. And he, according to Ezra chapter 1, verse 1, he was used by God to fulfill the promise made to Israel. Now, when I say Israel, I should say Judah, because there was no Israel. They were scattered. They were nomadic people, and these became the Samaritans of Jesus' day. So they weren't really true Jews, they were half-breeds. And so the Jews didn't, or the Jewish people didn't accept them.
And when King Cyrus allowed them to come back and rebuild the wall, was part of it.
First of all, he allowed them to come back
the foundation,
because they needed to build the temple. The temple was the first thing that they built in Jerusalem.
But when they did come do the wall, where did that wall, was that wall the whole surrounding of Israel? the whole thing, or where was
Yeah, the
wall?
old city of Jerusalem, the wall was completed by Nehemiah, but it was the city of Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem. Yeah. Now you have to picture it was fulfilled in 52 days. So, but you have to think, not all the walls weren't torn down. There would be sections of walls that were destroyed, so they had to rebuild those sections that had been rebuilt or torn down. And it's significant that Cyrus was used of God to allow the Jewish people to come back to the land. And there were 3 returns, one under Zerubbabel, and you read that in Ezra 1 through 6. That's all about Zerubbabel. And you can see the list of people who came back with Zerubbabel. Not all the people came back, just partially. Then Ezra brought later, Zerubbabel started, I think, in about 537, 2 years after the Medo-Persians overthrew the Babylonians. Then Zerubbabel brought a group of people back to Jerusalem. And then Hosea would be in the 600s. If you read your thing, I'm putting a date on it, but I'm just guessing. So then Nehemiah comes back, and the best way to remember that is 444. It's about 445, 444 BC is when Nehemiah came back. And Nehemiah is the last chronological book of the Old Testament. So how's that grab you? Because the prophet Malachi was about that time. So historically, chronologically, then Nehemiah, we remember him because he is one of the short guys in the Bible. Was he tall? Okay. Any other questions about this? It's important kind of to get the map. You can't understand anything without a map.
Harvey, my question isn't about the map, but when you read through Hosea, I know Ephraim is referring to the northern kingdom. Sometimes he'll talk about Judah, and sometimes he praises Judah, and other times he does
Because there was a Judah at the time when he was. See, after.
Well, is Judah
you have to think about this. The whole thing, 931 is about when the kingdom split into the north and the south. They were together under King Saul, David, and Solomon. After Solomon, his son, who was a numbskull, the kingdom splits. And you have now the north called Israel and the south called Judah.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. So sometimes throughout the book, he pronounces judgment will be coming on Judah too.
Sure.
Is that just kind of like an aside, but the main book is to
Well, I think he's
kingdom?
thinking about the whole picture, and the south is going to get whacked too by Babylon. But that's later. That's going to happen. He's more concerned about the north, and they're going to get it because of the Assyrians. But he will bring that in because he's concerned about the whole territory. But he's prophesying, well, if you look at it, one of the best, on that first paragraph that you have on your handout, I'm just guessing. I have no real proof of it, but I'm putting the book about 767 to 686. And the reason why is you can see the 4 different kings of this is Judah now. These 4 kings are Judah: Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. These are good kings. And he's listing them, and you can see the dates. But then he lists Jeroboam, and it's Jeroboam the second. Jeroboam the first was at the time of Solomon, and when the kingdom splits and he flees to Egypt, and in 931 the kingdom splits and he comes back because Solomon's dead. And he then moves the northern kingdom away from God and begins, and he builds a temple here in Ephraim's territory, and he builds a temple up here in Dan's territory, and so these folk go up to Dan and these folk go down to Ephraim. And Ephraim now, as you're reading Hosea, Ephraim is used as a term for all the northern kingdom. And we know that Ephraim was Joseph's son. But you'll see that as you read the book, and you'll say, why don't they talk about the northern kingdom, Israel? It's that the name Ephraim becomes synonymous with the whole northern kingdom. Any other?
But those temples, were they pagan?
They were pagan temples. And you can see in that first paragraph, there were 3 major pagan religions. Notice you have the one Baal worship, and that was by Jezebel and Ahab. They brought that in when they were in the scene, and you can read about Jezebel and in 1 Kings chapter about 17, 18, when Elijah is on the scene. And he had conflict with Jezebel. The next, one of the other pagan religions was called the mother-child cult. And Semiramis becomes almost, it's in pagan Egyptian, you see, if you read anything about Babylon and Egypt and Greece and all of this pagan kind of worship, the names may change, but they're really talking about the same people. And Semiramis becomes a goddess to a pagan goddess, and they worship Semiramis. And Semiramis had a child by the name of Tammuz, and Tammuz dies, killed by a pig, and when he was a little boy, and lo and behold, he comes alive after 3 days, and this is all about Easter time, and just see how Satan reproduces and gets people off track. And then the third one was called the calf worship, and that starts with Aaron, and when Moses goes up to the mountain and Aaron is there, and he said he just put this thing into this, and it came out a calf, and they worshipped it. How in the world can that happen? You know, you have to have a form to make a calf, and so on. So those are the things they worship. So the first paragraph kind of gives you a good history of the things that are happening. Now, Hosea enters the picture, and I won't take time to read every verse, but just to get you, particularly as you look at that first page of the handout, you see the second paragraph, Hosea chapter 1, represents the marital experience of Hosea and Gomer. And I'm not sure that in reading the text that he said to Hosea, I want you to marry a prostitute. I think the idea is that she became a prostitute after the marriage, I think is more appropriate. And you'll find all kinds of different statements about that, but that's the position I would take, because it was Israel who became unfaithful to God after God initially chooses them, and they go into unfaithfulness. And he uses this kind of idea that Israel, like Gomer would be to Hosea, an unfaithful wife. That's what Israel is like to God, and that you have to see that, and you see the strong emotion that would be in a marriage of that nature. And so just put that into what is God experiencing with Israel then. There must be a lot of, because God has emotion, and we can see here that he's trying to make it so that we get the picture about the unfaithfulness of Israel. And on Israel's count, the northern kingdom had no good kings. That is, they had no revivals during the period of time that they existed. That is, from 931 down to 722, they were unfaithful to God and going after these other gods, worshiping that which was paganism rather than to trust him. And that's what you see from that second paragraph. So then there are 3 children in the third paragraph. And these 3 children, again, it to me is there's an emotion here. There's a what words are there to say? The son is born first, and his name is Jezreel, and Jezreel is right up here in the northern tribes. That's where Jezreel is. This is the valley of Megiddo, where the Battle of Megiddo is going to take place in the northern kingdom. It's a wonderful valley, and the city of Jezreel sits here. Megiddo sits back in here. And these cities are right on the rim of this valley. And the valley is the valley of Jezreel is going to be a place where battles are going to take place, and where correction is God is going to allow the Jewish people to be corrected because of this. And so you have to see then this poor boy carries this name, Jezreel. Then a second child, a daughter, is born, and the word lo means no. Ruamah means unpitied, no love. And you have to see what that might be like to be in a family where they're receiving attention, but you're not. You're ignored. That must have been tough. But the names of these children were going to be synonymous with what's going to happen to Israel. God is going to treat Israel like they're not loved, because he's going to allow horrible things to happen. You have to see how bad the Assyrians were. They would cut your arms and legs off and throw you in a pile and let the buzzards eat you. That's how bad it was. So you would be among corpses, like it was in Germany, where they just that one scene where you see the bodies all pushed by a bulldozer into this trench, and then they put lime all over it and cover it up. It's just a horrible scene. Well, that's kind of what was happening, what would happen to the people. They would be starved out to death in cities because they would be surrounded by the enemy and not allowed to come in or out until they ate all the food, and then they start eating their children. And you look at the text and say, how in the world could you eat your children? Well, if you're hungry enough, I guess you could. What a horrible, to be brought to that place, and that's what that third chapter's about. And then there's another child born, another boy, and his name is Lo-Ami, which means not loved, or you're not my people, I don't want anything to do with you. So these names are going to be, they illustrate God's relationship with what's going to happen to Israel. But then you'll see that he hastens in chapter 1, in verse 10. He says and goes through these children. Then in verse 10, yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered or measured or numbered. And in the place where it is said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are my people, my sons. So in one place, he's going to treat them like he doesn't love them, doesn't have anything to do with them. Yet he promises a future event where he will go after them. And we know scripture, several scriptures where God is going to take care of Israel, such as Ezekiel 37, the dry bones, that speaks about both tribes. Here, he's speaking about Hosea. In the book of Hosea, he's speaking about the two tribes coming together again, but it'll be in the future. And the problem with the northern kingdom, they're still scattered. Judah, as we've just talked about, Judah came back from Babylon because Cyrus allowed them to come back to build their temple. But the northern kingdom is going to be a part of a future event. And that seems to be clear. But right now, or as we're looking at the text here, the southern kingdom is going to last much longer than the northern kingdom. So paragraph number 3 is just telling you how God's going to treat Israel like he doesn't like them. And it involves the names of these children. Then, in the 4th paragraph down, in the midst of the negative meaning of the names of the 3 children, the prophet promises now in chapter 1, verse 10. Then Hosea complained, but then he complains about after saying that, then what about the unfaithfulness of Gomer? And he talks about that. And so as Gomer is going to suffer for her sins, so Israel will be stripped and suffer for her sins also. And so you see this happening here. Look at verse 6 of chapter 2. Verse 6 says, therefore, behold, I will hedge up her way with thorns. I will build a wall against her so that she cannot find her paths. She will pursue her lovers, but she will not overtake them. And she will seek them, but will not find them. And then she will say, I will go back to my first husband, who is Hosea. And for it was better for me than for now. To summarize, all that's what's going to happen is she is given gifts, and it's going to talk about that. She is given gifts from these lovers. And she then leaves Hosea, but some of these gifts are actually from Hosea. But she thinks they're from other lovers. So it's a strange situation that's going on here. And she finally ends up as a kind of a castaway. This lifestyle doesn't last very long, and she's a castaway, and she ends up being sold as a slave then to the first bidder. And Hosea then is told by God to go and get her out of that condition and take her home. And so that's what you have in, look at chapter 3, verse 1. Then the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who was loved by her husband. And it's so he then pays for her with shekels of silver and barley. It amounts to 30 shekels of silver, as they tell us, our commentaries. 30 shekels of silver is the price of a slave. 30 shekels of silver is what Judas got for Christ. And so chapter 3 is a short chapter, but it's all about Hosea going and getting her and then brings her home. And we understand then from that point on, she is loved by Hosea and responsive. She's responsive to Hosea, and he's responsive to her, and they live happily ever after.
What time frame does he speak of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think we know how long that is. If
Is that the millennium when there happened to be?
well, I see what you're saying. She will the final Israel's going to go through some traumatic experiences, which we know, but the final one will be the tribulation period. And during that tribulation period, God is actually going to woo Israel back to himself. That's the picture here that you see with Hosea doing this to Gomer. God's going to do this, but the final place would be the millennial king or the tribulation period. And then Israel will, and you have to kind of picture this, Israel will end up cast away from all of her lovers. Her final lover is the Antichrist. And you have to see this if you go to Revelation chapter 12, it gives you some indication of how bad this is. Revelation chapter 12, and Satan is kicked out of heaven. Verse 7, 12:7. Don't believe that this text is really telling us Satan still has access to heaven, like he did with Job in Job chapter 1 and 2. Satan is not kicked out of heaven yet, but he will be. And look at Revelation 12:7. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon and his angels waging war. And they were not found strong enough, they, meaning the angels of Satan, the dragon. And there was no longer a place found for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who was called the devil and Satan, who deceived the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And the only indication we have as far as angels are concerned that they would be called demons, is that you see, if you go back to verse 2, you have verse 2 and 3, you have them, about a third of the angels go with Satan. We don't know how many there are. So therefore, 2/3 stay with Michael. And he's thrown down, verse 9 of chapter 12, and then salvation is clear. And then verse 11, and they overtook him because of the blood of the Lamb, because of the word of their testimony. And they did not love their lives even when faced with death. For this reason, rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Verse 13, and when the dragon saw that he was thrown down to the earth, he persecuted the woman. The woman, we believe, has to be Israel, back in verse 1. And so he goes after the woman who gave birth to the male child Christ. But the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman. We know from Exodus 19 that the wing is a figure of speech that means God's protection. And it uses almost the same idea about the wings. So we know it's God's, and as you look at this, God didn't, in Exodus 19, he didn't take all of the Jewish people by wings and get them out of Egypt. They walked. They walked across the Red Sea, the parting of the Red Sea. So we know it just is a term that means God protected them. So God's going to protect these Jewish people during that tribulation period. But the 2 wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into the wilderness to her place. There, we believe, she'll be protected. And where she was nourished for a time and times and half a time, 3.5 years. So the last 3.5 years is going to be a horrible time for Israel, because Israel believes that Antichrist is the final lover. And then he will turn on Israel. And we know this. In putting this together, you can piece this about by turning to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. This is when this is all going to happen. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 4 is really where it comes. Who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called object of worship, so that he takes a seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. And we believe that's what chapter 12 of Revelation is talking about. When Satan is kicked out of heaven, it's about the middle of the tribulation period. He enters into the Antichrist, and Antichrist, driven by Satan, goes after Israel. And they try to destroy Israel. If you read Revelation 12 on 14 and so on, 15, the serpent, he pours out, this is figurative language, he pours out water, and the earth absorbs that water. There are nations of the world, as Israel flees out of Israel, out of Jerusalem area, out of what we have here on the map, they're going to flee to the countries of the world. And the countries of the world are going to absorb them just like they did it during the Holocaust period of time. Although America sent back a boatload of Jewish people back to Israel, where they ended up in the Holocaust, they ended up being killed. So this description here that you see in Revelation is Satan trying to get rid of Israel. Why? Why is there such hatred? Because if Israel exists, Satan is in bad shape. As long as there's an Israel, God is going to fulfill his promise to Israel, the Abrahamic covenant made to Israel. If God can't fulfill his covenant, then God's a liar and deceptive to Israel, and Satan would have won a major victory. But Satan's not going to win, and God's going to be victorious over the whole group of people. Questions? You're full of questions.
This is a bit of a long question, and I'm springing it from the reference you just made to Revelation. It is a subject that you can waive today. It's a big subject, and it's troubling, and I think it's going to affect us as believers probably more and more. It has to do with what I'll call UFOs. There's a growing science and sense, even amongst believers, that they are demons, UFOs. They've been kept secret, they've been kept quiet at the White House and all of that, but they definitely are. I'm not so sure that we believe that they definitely are. It is now said that when the rapture happens, the world's going to need an excuse. They're going to say, well, we now believe in UFOs, and those people were all taken by aliens. Do we have a position? And you can waive it, but I do think we're going to be facing it and would like an answer at some point.
Yeah, I believe as we get closer to the latter days, you're going to see evidence of the spirit world getting together with the human world. Remember, this occurred in Genesis chapter 6, where the spirit world got together with the human world. The sons of God were angels. The daughters of men were human women. And then God steps in and stops it with a flood. Okay, so I think that I think you're onto something. I think these evidence, people don't know what they're talking about, but there is a spirit world. And that spirit world is going to get together with the human world. It's going to have to. Because the tribulation period, as you read there, he unleashes the bottomless pit, and these angels, especially in the 9th chapter of Revelation, God allows these angels to inhabit people, and it speaks about scorpions attacking them and stinging them, and how effective that's going to be. And I take it that's exactly what's going to happen. And I think that's an explanation for how are you going to explain millions of people being gone from this planet all over the world at the same moment. Just zip, we're gone. How's that going to be explained? UFOs, obviously. That's the only explanation. We're all building toward that. So what, are these real? I don't know. But I can tell, I believe that there's going to be, as we get closer to the end, to the time of the tribulation, we're going to see evidence of the spirit world, demonic world, not spirit, demonic world, getting together with the human world. And I think we need to be aware of that happening. I don't know whether that answers your question or not, but no, I think, and I'm not the only one that I think a lot of us believe that. And you need to be aware. See, people are not aware of a spirit world. There are things that happened. When I was in Racine, I would get a phone call once in a while. I received a phone call one day by a lady, and she said, I've just had an encounter with some kind of demonic force. And she said, this is not the only time. She said, one day we had a picket fence, and one day I heard it was as if somebody was taking a stick and going across my picket fence. You know how it would make that sound. And there was nobody there. She looked and nobody was there. Then on another occasion, she had somewhat of a library, and there would be a book opened up to a certain, and I've forgotten what the pages were about, but she said it was open to that page. I'd put it back into the bookshelf, and the next morning there it would be again, open to the same page. How do you explain that? Then, she said, one night I was awakened, and I believe I saw a hooded person, something hooded like a monk, over my bed looking down on me. And then that hooded being turned and went out the door. Her door was ajar, and she could see her son sleeping on the couch in the living room, and she could see the light from the window shining, the moon shining on him, and this object went over and bent over him. And then it was gone. In the morning, she didn't want to tell her son, but he said, "Mother, last night I was awakened by a hooded, like a monk, looking down on me. I didn't see his face, but I knew." So she knew she wasn't there. She had the cooperation of her son then. And he said to her, I think it was, who's the one the Grim Reaper? coming to get me. Well, these are, there were more of these stories that people, maybe just Racine, Wisconsin suffered that way, but these were stories that I got. And so anyway, I take it that I'm saying all that to say this: there is another world that's right around us, and we're totally unaware of it. And we need to be aware that it's there.
We need to get prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we need to be aware of the fact that there is another world, and it's not, don't poo-poo it, it's live.
Put on the full armor.
Full on the armor. That's right. Get that armor on. Did you put your armor on this morning? Adrian, you didn't put your armor on. You didn't have your shoes of your breastplate of righteousness, and get it on. But that's important that we do that. Now, let's keep going here. So you have then the little bottom paragraph, the scene changes to the place where the wife is allured back to the husband. That's what chapter 2 is about, and becomes faithful again. So you see that. And then the top of the next page, by the fact that Hosea redeemed Gomer for the 30 pieces of silver. And this is the price of a slave. The raisin cakes will be, when you look at you're back at Hosea again, and look at chapter 3, and look at, then the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by her husband. The language, the translation, sometimes we don't get it all, but yet an adulteress, we know that, even as the Lord loves the sons of Israel, though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes. That's just a reference to that, to the pagan religions that they had turned to away from God. So he's saying, what Israel's doing, or what Gomer did, is what Israel has done to him. So I bought her for myself. And he simply describes that, what is taking place there, and brings her back. And this is, Israel's going to come back someday and be a part of that, but that will be the millennial kingdom. And it will take the tribulation period. Israel has gone through many years of difficulties. And even in our lifetime, in my lifetime, they've gone through the Holocaust, they've gone through the Yom Kippur War, they've gone through the Six-Day War, where God came and helped them. And reading evidence in the Six-Day War, for instance, there were Jewish testimonies of seeing angels in the hills protecting them. That's their testimony. I just read it. So they knew that God had protected. There was no way that Russia had given armament to the Palestinians, to the Arab people, in order to overthrow Israel. And they thought they could do it on the Yom Kippur, the great Day of Atonement, that Israel wouldn't fight back. But they did. And God helped them to overthrow and drive. And at this point, they drove the Egyptians back to Cairo. It's amazing. You have to read about it isn't, Israel may get the glory for it, but it was really God helping them in that whole situation.
Pastor, I heard that on Kipner War in 1974 that Nixon, as a little boy, his mother said someday he'd save Israel because Kissinger did not want to help. But Nixon said if they want one tank, send them 10. If they want one plane, send them 10. So they credit Nixon for saving Israel in that 1974 war because of what his mother had told him when he was a child, that someday he'd save Israel. But I can't believe that Kissinger didn't want to help.
No, there were a lot of people that didn't want to help. There were a lot of people in the United States government that didn't want Israel to become a nation in 1948. That was a close call, but it was made possible. Well, as you look at that the top paragraph on that second page, just again, you're seeing there. Now we'll turn in chapter 4. Let me just make a comment about that the second paragraph. The Lord uses the marriage of Hosea and Gomer to illustrate the relationship between himself and the nation Israel. And that's what chapter 4, verse 1 through chapter 14, verse 9 is really all about now. Is God going to be working with Israel and bringing Israel back, and God through Hosea is going to tell Israel how bad off they are, so that the Lord records the sin of Israel. And you can read that in the chapter 4, and he keeps almost it's like it's repeated over and over again. Almost like he's reminding them. He doesn't just remind them once. He's saying, here it is again, you dirty rats. Get your stomach full of it. And so that's what you'll read here particularly in this chapter, in this book. And the second chapter then, or the second paragraph down on page 2, is because of these sins, the Lord will withdraw himself like the children, like he withdrew his love from the children. That's the same, and we read this, but I don't think we get the emotion of it. And yet, how the unfaithfulness of Israel, how that affected the Lord. And he wanted to help them. And they turned on him like an unfaithful person in a marriage. And so that's what would be good for you to see, how the emotion of God, and maybe that would affect us from going going astray, and I don't know, but anyway, that's what you see. And he's spelling out several things here, the whole business of, that's what idolatry is all about. Becoming unfaithful to God and worshiping things that don't even exist or can't do anything for them. And because of these sins, the Lord withdraws himself from Israel. That's chapter 5. And the people are going to suffer judgment, as illustrated by the destruction. And he uses different imageries, like a moth. What's a moth do? You have this nice wool garment, and you go and get your garment, and then it's got all kinds of holes in it. The dirty moths ate your cloth. And that's kind of the idea. Or, if you don't like that illustration, look at the lion, the young lion. Can you think about a young lion that has got all the energy in the world and just tears things apart. And then I've just noted there that the word Ephraim is used oftentimes here for all of the northern tribes, not Judah, not the southern tribes, Benjamin and Judah, but the northern 10 tribes. You'll see Ephraim being used. And then let's just look at this last paragraph. Following, this is the third one down, following the Lord's judgment, Israel will repent, cry to the Lord. And that's what, if you look at chapter 6, verse 1, it's a statement about Israel. Come, let us return to the Lord. That's what Israel's saying. And then they just make mention about the latter rains being the millennial kingdom, a reference to the millennial kingdom where God is going to bless Israel again. Rain was so important to Israel. If you didn't get rain, you didn't get crops. And so you would have former rains and latter rains, and that was the productivity of their crops, so they could have grain and so on. It shows God's blessing upon them. And that's usually understood as being a reference to God blessing Israel, but he won't really bless them until the millennial kingdom. And we'll talk more about that. So we'll pick it up at that third paragraph, chapter 6. We'll just make reference to 5 and 6, but we need to stop now. But read ahead, and if there's any questions, talk to me after. Thank you, Father, for the time together. We need your guidance and direction as we look at this material, and help us to understand not just words on a page, but help us to understand what these words really mean, what they mean to you and what they should mean to us, and what they're going to mean to Israel someday in the future. So, Lord, thank you for this time together. In Jesus' name, amen. Go get your coffee.
Is this where the wife of God comes in? Is this?
Yes, Israel is called the wife of God.